you're always gonna have an excuse, like these first two jokers, you're always gonna have an excuse why you can't take the time to close the gap and to get into someone's story. There will always be an excuse not to go to one of the days like I Love My City. There'll always be an excuse not to serve the broken. There'll always be an excuse not to give to the poor. There'll always be an excuse not to share your faith. There'll always be an excuse. There's always some kind of good, legitimate excuse as well, right? Like, listen, I'm a pastor, but I'm going to be real with you, okay? Like, I struggle with this. I remember one time I was at a prayer meeting. I mean, praying, like real praying. Like praying like the way that you people pray, okay? Like real prayer. Real prayer. Not like the next service. They're not as saved as y'all. Y'all the real people, okay? But I'm at this prayer meeting, and we prayed for 2 hours. It was powerful. Presence of God is beautiful. About 1:30 in the morning after the prayer meeting, I was heading home. And on my way home, I kind of was still in the spiritual moment. Like it was that lingering thing, you know, whenever it's like really good, it's like you still in it. You like, shout to the Lord. I mean, I was working it. So at this time, I was driving an old red Mitsubishi Eclipse. So I'm driving in this Mitsubishi, I'm singing a little Hillsong, Darlene, checking it, you know what I'm saying? I'm just like working it. And y'all don't even know who that is, but you look her up. She's old school, but she's still good. I'm listening to some Darlene Check, Hillsong. I'm praising God, worshiping, praying. And here's what I'm praying. God, send me to the nation. Send me all over the world. God, I'll do anything. My answer is yes. I'm just praying this audacious prayer. I'm young. I'm a young pastor. I'm like, God, I will go anywhere you send me. Send me across the seas, God. Use me. I want to be used by you. So it's almost 2 a.m. I'm driving down the road, and I look to the right, and there's a couple, and they're on the side of the road. Their car's broken down. They're changing their tire. And I'm praying, God, use me. Send me across the seas, God. God, I want to be used by you. And I see them, and I'm like, Lord, send me to Africa. Send me to... And God, you know, God has a way of backhanding you. And he just like, whop, just smacked me. He said, really, Jason? You want me to send you across the seas and you can't even go across the street? He's like, really? I'm like, but God, I gotta wake up at 6 a.m. and it's 2 a.m., Lord. I gotta wake up and I got work tomorrow and it's just not convenient right now and I'm almost home. My house is around the corner and God's like, Jason, if I cannot entrust you with the broken people in your backyard, how am I gonna entrust you with anybody around the world? So I just kind of just wheeled it around, went back over there. Funniest thing, I'm on my way back there and I'm thinking, God's gonna use me to lead these people to Christ. And I'm gonna get to pray the sinner's prayer with them. I'm all spiritual, you know, everything. And I pull up and I start talking to them and they're Christians already. I'm like, this is kind of a waste of my time, man. Couldn't they have called AAA or something? Like, and people dying and going to hell out there. They need me, not you. So dumb. But I was able to encourage them. And this girl, she was so sweet. She said, we were praying. We just had a tough season. And we were praying, saying, God, will you just send somebody? So we need somebody to help us. And I'm like, I get back in my car and I'm like, I'm sorry, Lord. I'm so stupid. Listen, there's always an excuse why we can't get in somebody's ditch. There's always going to be an excuse. But it's never a legitimate excuse. And the magnitude that he calls us to is to love all people. That doesn't matter their race or their belief system or if they ever will come to your church. They may never come. Love them with no strings attached. It's the magnitude. But the motivation, so where do we get this motivation? See, secular moralism is simply this. The motivation for doing good with secular moralism is because I'm a good person, I should be good to all people, and I should help the poor, and I should serve people, and I should do philanthropy work, and what, you know, that's secular moralism. Be good. Religious moralism is, this is my duty, and I should be good to people, and I should help people and serve people because this is my job, this is my responsibility. Both of them are actually bad motivations because both of them produce guilt when you don't do it. And they're motivated by probably a little bit of pride. Like, when I do these things, I feel good about myself. And when I don't feel good about it. And so you become like a yo-yo. It's like, some days you feel good because you helped someone with their groceries, and some days you feel guilty because you passed them when they had a broken... You see what I'm saying? So it's not a good motivation. So what is the good motivation? I think what Jesus is trying to teach this guy in the story, this expert in the law, by implying that the man in the ditch is a Jewish man and that the Samaritan is the unlikely savior in the story, I think Jesus is trying to show him this. That here's who's who in the story to the expert. You're the guy in the ditch. And there's someone that you've rejected. There's someone that you look at and you see as not worthy for you to love them or to be in relationship with them. You've rejected them, and they have every right to reject you back. And yet, out of the graciousness of their heart, they sacrifice things in their own life. They sacrifice their very life to come. See, this guy, the Good Samaritan, could have been killed. What if the robbers come back? So this self-sacrificial love, he's showing this guy, you've got to feel a person that has every right to reject you, and yet they still love you and show you grace. When your heart has been warmed by a story like that, where someone that you deserve for them to hate you, to reject you, to punish you, but they show you love and grace, it's when you've been graced, it's only when you experience grace can you actually express it to other people. It's only the person that has been loved. It's when you get to that place. Well, where are you going to find something like that? It's the gospel. Listen, we're not to read the story and say, the Good Samaritan, let's go be like the Good Samaritan. Jesus is the true and better Samaritan. You know, in John, I think it's chapter 8, that the Jewish people of his day, they told Jesus, he's demon-possessed and he's a Samaritan. So they view Jesus as a Samaritan. Jesus is the true and better Samaritan who comes down from heaven, and he gets down into the ditch and the depravity of man, into the sinfulness and the brokenness of man, and he gets down and gets dirty, rolls up his sleeves, he picks us up out of our brokenness, he puts us in a safe place, brings us to an inn, and he says, listen, I'm going away, but I'm coming back for you. Listen, Jesus is the true and better Samaritan, and we're the ones in the ditch. And when you understand the gospel is the best motivation. You know why we serve the poor? Because we were once poor. You know why we serve those that have no clothes, that are naked? Because we were once naked in our shame. You know why we serve those that are hungry? Because we were once hungry. It is the gospel that motivates our hearts. A guy asked me yesterday, I was speaking at this conference down in Plymouth. Guy asked me yesterday, he was like, what's the greatest motivation for morality? Fear, the fear of God, or the love of God? I said, well, probably whichever one helps you be moral, I guess. I don't know. But I said, I would imagine this. Fear is we probably have a wrong definition of fear. Fear, we think of it like, oh, I'm afraid. I say fear is that reverence of it's this wonder and awe of how big God is, right? I was like, that's a good motivation. I was like, but I just think that love is the best motivation to live a life of obedience to God. And I was like, but watch this. The motivation is not your love for God as much as it is God's love for you. It's when you truly understand how unconditionally you've been loved, how you have received unqualified kindness from God. There's been no prerequisites or preconditions for him to love you. He just says, I love you. When you experience the gospel like that, I'm telling you, it makes you want to love your neighbor as yourself. I think Jesus has given him, see, this guy wanted a rule. This guy said, who's my neighbor? Give me a moral manageable, something that I can manage. And Jesus says, I'm not going to give you a rule. I'm going to give you a dynamic. I'm going to give you something so dynamically different, and it's going to transform and change your life. And the third thing is this. So I gave you, my first was the magnitude of this love, the motivation of this love, and then the last was the method. Here's the method. You and I, as Christians, we have got to be committed to redefining who our neighbor is constantly, because our broken hearts have a proclivity to limit our love to people that look like us, act like us, dress like us, are in the same social, economic bracket as us. We cannot be people like that. That is not the kingdom. The kingdom says, I'm drawing my circle so big. Everybody's there's a seat at my table for anyone. It doesn't matter their sexual dysphoria. It doesn't matter. There's a seat in this church. There's a seat at my table. My circle's big. I love all people. Part of the method is we have to constantly redefine. Secondly, we have to remember that the true and greater Samaritan is Jesus, and that we were once in a ditch. When you remember that you were in a ditch and you were rescued, you were going to die. and Jesus rescued you, that'll change, that will flood your heart with a grace for people. It's when we forget that we were once in a ditch. That's when we become callous to the brokenness of humanity. And the last thing as the band comes up is this. What is the method? I think it's this. I said it earlier, is we have to go from our side to their side. I'm gonna encourage you to do this. Every single one of you in this church, every single one of you, at least once, I admonish you, I implore you, I exhort you, and all the other spiritual sounding things that say, I beg you. I beg you to go one day on an outreach, on an I Love My City, go and get up next to someone's brokenness. Go and get up next to someone's pain, and I want you to do this. I want you to lean in and say, tell me your story. I want to know your story. And listen to them. Don't just feed the hungry. Sit down and have a meal with the hungry. Tell me your story. Don't just go and do an outreach to help kids in the foster care system. Man, start mentoring someone and learn their story. Get to know their story. When you get to know their story, it will give you a totally different perspective of their pain. And it will flood your heart with such a brokenness and a burden for them. There's something powerful about it. It's easy to keep our distance and to stay in a place of judgment towards broken people. But when we close the gap, I'm telling you, it changes something in our heart.